Why did Matt Ackermann need to see this David Burkus and Kit Huffman clip from their appearance on Just Press Record? Oh, you're going to want to see this one. If you care about brand, if you care about identity, I don't care if you're in financial services or any other profession. If you're trying to shepherd clients into the future and figure out how to talk about it to get more clients, you got to hear Matt Ackermann reflecting on this stuff. It's so good. Roll some clips, Jack.
When it comes to building great brands is standing out. And frankly, most people, when they are in wealth management, are just happy blending in. What is going to grab your attention? Okay. The headline's going to grab your attention. What's going to make people want to lean in? Bottom up, you want to say, what result am I looking for at the end of the day? And then you got to work those things to find the middle. So the middle is often forgotten about. But if you don't connect those dots from, I've got your attention, but without helping and creating an outcome that I want, it's useless. Without knowing my outcome, you could have the greatest headline ever and it's just clickbait.
It's easier to look backwards than it is to look forward, but really just starting is the hardest part. So that's my takeaway that I saw from that.
How do you, and that's the thing, right? How do you look backwards, forwards, right?
If you're starting from having zero, we talk about a lot for this concept of VCR. Everyone has either vision, capability, and reach.
You're watching Just Press Record right here on the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matt Zeigler, a special Oh Snap, Guess What I Saw episode where I invite a prior guest back, part of my network, so we can talk about a clip that I had to show him to do a little personal archiving live, just like I do every day at cultishcreative.com. I'm going to show you how another person can reflect on some stuff and bring out some crazy new thoughts. So who's back? Who's with me here today? Why, it's the man who's taken more center stages than the 35-year run of Phantom of the Opera, the man who's not a chief medical officer or a collateralized mortgage obligation or even a current mode of operation, but an honorary Cultish Creative University Doctor of Marketing Collateral Optimization, Dr. MCO, a chief brand officer. So I could have even gotten that in the right, but there's not as many good acronyms there. So pardon me. We got to get the big puns out of the way. We're packing a Mac in the back of the yak, packing a Matt in the back of the yak, packing a Matt in the back of the yak, packing a Matt in the back. Put this Matt on the back with me. Keep him out of your car trunk. Big puns and big guns from the center stage author and the chief brand officer now of Integrated Partners, Matt Ackermann. Welcome back to Just Press Record.
We've got Matt's covered from A to Z here, folks, and it's so good to be here. I am really excited. I love the big pun reference in there too. I caught that one. And I love the fact that all of the musical knowledge that I spew in the book never goes over your head. That's why I really love being here. There's little nuggets in there where people come to me to talk about them and they don't understand them. I'm like, Matt does. Matt knows.
I am here. And not just for the Taylor Swift chapters.
Absolutely.
But big time for the Taylor Swift chapters.
Who isn't?
So we got this question. I got this clip. You're going to guess by the end of the episode what's on the back of this card. But before we dive into the clip and talk about this a little, I mean, you and Matthew Stafford, what a hang that was.
Oh, so much fun.
Anything fun since we recorded, I don't know, sometime last year? I mean, you got a title change at work? What's going on?
Title change at work. I've lost 60 pounds.
You're looking great, man.
Thank you, my friend. A doctor comes and says to you, do you want to see your kids get married? And you go, yes, then you listen. I think doctors should get more honest in general. I think if they stopped trying to be nice and started getting real, to bring back some real world lines from 1994, shout out to Puck. I really think at the end of the day, we all just need to get healthier in our own lifestyles and then good things happen. Yeah. So then I sat down with Andre Moore, who I got to get you to meet at some point because she's fantastic.
Co-author of the book.
Yes. We sat down and chatted and she said, well, what's kind of on your horizon? What's your big goals? And I said, people, you may laugh about this, but my belief is we need to cultivate brands that are more memorable. I was like, I work in an industry in wealth management where everything looks and sounds the same jargon, the same crap. I could have used a different word, but I didn't because I'm trying to keep it PG for the audience here. But so much of it, when it comes to building great brands, is standing out. And frankly, most people, when they are in wealth management, are just happy blending in. And I think that to me, if we're talking brand today, it's all about what can I do to stand out from the crowd?
Absolutely. And how hard? I mean, look, I work for a company who has a lighthouse as part of the logo, and rightfully so.
Sure.
But then you got to do other weird stuff, or else you're just fading into the background. And in fact, it's not in the clip we're going to show, but I think Kit Huffman, who's in this clip, refers to them as just the most stale cracker of things you can do, and kind of hurts, but at the same time.
Lighthouses
exactly
and
what she
compasses, the amount of lighthouses and compasses that I see and that I try to talk people out of is jarring. I was designing a new logo for a great brand that we've been working on for a while, and I was trying to kind of push them in the direction of something different, and everyone wants to kind of prefers that muddy middle. They prefer that area of like blues and grays and lighthouses and compasses and older couples on a yacht. And it's like, you're going to look and sound like everyone else. Being different and being unique and being yourself ultimately is what got you to where you're at and is going to take you to the next level too.
All right, that is a perfect segue. We're going to roll this clip, and then I'm going to invite you to reflect on this with me. Producer Jack Forehand, go ahead. Put this clip in for us.
Yeah, you just look back. Like I totally could have used some sort of content strategy person in 2012 when I really started all of this stuff, right? I could have used exist. Your mom was probably emailing her investors when that happened, but because I just followed whatever was interesting to me. It wasn't until I had a 10-year-long body of work that I was like, everything that's interesting to me seems to have this one thing in common. Maybe I should drill down on that. So we didn't really discover that until about 4 years ago. And now you hear all of these different personal branding people, because again, this is half of my business. I have to learn all this stuff too about it. Oh, you need to have 3 or 4 content pillars, and then maybe like your sidecar personality, like the fact that you love pickleball or whatever, right? And you have to mix up your number of posts and this and that. I was like, I didn't do any of that. I just wrote about whatever the heck seemed interesting. And then after a decade was like, the same couple things just keep seeming interesting to me. I guess I should spend more time on that. And that's how it went.
Kit, you're not on the clock for this, but I'm just curious. So you hear him put that through line together and communicate this.
Yeah.
What jumps out at you besides the non-linearity of it all, but that through line as he communicated it? What's powerful about that for you?
Well, I think it's just that when you have a full body of work and be able to reflect back on it, that's way easier to do than when you are starting from scratch. Because a lot of my clients, when they come to me, it's usually that they want, again, like new clients, they're maybe going for big investors. So they need to have that clarity right now. But when you have 10 years of work to look back on, and that's like your legacy or your portfolio, you can like very clearly see that. But it's that starting from scratch of like, where do I even begin to carve into this? Where that is what's really intimidating. And what I always say is the biggest step for clients is like, it is just starting. It's going to know that your work is going to look a lot different your first year than it is your second year and going forward. And I'll show them examples of like evolutions of different thought leaders. Like the one that I like to tie back to is Mel Robbins, for example, and her through line, where she started as a lawyer, went to law school, then she was a CNN commentator. And then on a lot of those things were law. And then which really set her up to be what she is now as this thought leader within leadership, but just showing up so authentically and so powerfully on camera. All of those are just her through line there is really powerful. So it's easier to look backwards than it is to look forward, but really just starting is the hardest part. So that's my takeaway that I saw from that.
How do you, and that's the thing, right? How do you look backwards, forwards, right?
First off, I mean, what do you make of how do you look backwards, forwards? Could I just start right there? David Burkus' statement.
And I love that statement because I think it is so important as we kind of look backwards to look forwards, right? Because I think sometimes we get stuck, and he's talking about it here when he talks about kind of that content creation. Everyone's thinking about how do I, build this brand on social media. We've got to step back. And I think we've talked about this all the time. Like storytelling is storytelling. Storytelling, great storytelling, whether it was around a fire with cavemen or social media, requires you to do things that are different if you want everybody's attention so you can keep telling your story. It starts with audience. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget is the audience piece of this, is we really need a focus on our audience so that ultimately, as we look back, we're looking forward. If all we're thinking about is ourselves when we begin to paint a picture, no one's buying that picture because that's not what they're interested in that moment, or that's not, that notion sometimes of like great artists aren't appreciated until after they're gone. Well, I think when we're talking about brands, they want to be appreciated now. So I'm telling you, step back first and foremost when it comes to this, as you look backwards to look forwards, and know that storytelling is storytelling. It doesn't matter the venue you choose. And at the same time, know your audience first, because everything else is just dressing around that, because you've got to reach the people you're trying to reach at the end of the day. I got a fun story for you on that end.
Tell me a fun story.
Got a fun story for you on that end. My wife and I, when we're not, raising 2 kids and living here in New Jersey, we love to volunteer our time. I told you last time, I spend a lot of time coaching sports, but one of the things we do is we volunteer at a local church. We teach children's liturgy to the kids during church. And occasionally the church gives gifts to the kids. Usually it's an ornament or something, because the church has the same problem that financial advisors do. And that is the next generation doesn't know who the heck they are. I saw a stat the other day that only 17% of clients' children know who you are. And I was like really blown away by that. But the Catholic Church has the same problem. We're losing numbers. It's why there's not going to be a Catholic Pope, because the numbers are just dwindling in the Roman Catholic Church. So they give out gifts occasionally. Recently, they gave out this as a gift. For those listening along, it is a hunk of plastic with, Jesus or a shepherd on top with a sheep and some sort of bowl. What is this built for? Well, I'll tell you what it's built for. Apparently, it's built to hold holy water. I want to know the geniuses who are like, you know what kids like? Kids like things hanging in their room to hold holy water. They gave this to all the children, and my wife just shrugs at me like, I was like, I want to be in that meeting at the Catholic Church where they think about their audience and go, kids, let's all work together so we have a place to put our holy water in our room. Also, fun little fact, this thing, when you drop it on a marble floor, it makes a terrible noise at a church that has marble floors. Every child dropped it. It was terrible. All the old ladies. Because here's the thing. If they thought about their audience, you know what they would have given? Coloring book and crayons, maybe a few less dirty looks from the old ladies at church. And that's how you get the next generation, is you treat them nicely. So that is my little story to you about knowing your audience. And that is, they did not think about their audience when they handed out holy water holders to small children of the Catholic Church.
I mean, I would have taken a holy water, not the holy water hand grenade, but holy water hand grenades, holy water guns. Like, sure,
right? Give me something fun that at least says we understand that children like toys. They don't want something. They don't want a piece of plastic. And I like to think about sometimes. I'm still holding on to mine, but how many of those kids, those 50 kids that go down there every week, how many of those kids have theirs, and how many have been thrown away?
I would reckon about if you found the closest trash can in the proximity of the church that day, and many knowledgeable parents who looked at that and were like, oh, I don't need one more, not whatever the equivalent of a modern Happy Meal toy is. Like,
that's exactly what it is.
We don't need this in the house. This is less valuable than that.
Yes.
And it's in the trash can. All right. So when you have an audience, you're supposed to look at the room. You're supposed to say, if kids drop this on a marble floor at a church, half the people with hearing aids are never going to be able to hear anything that goes on, because this is going to interrupt everything. Yeah. But beyond that, and one of the things that was really interesting between Kit and David was, what about for people who can't look backwards yet? Like, Kit's early in her career, she's had a lot of success with her agency and growing it so far, but she's been amazed by the people they consult when they have the audience. She's like, what do I do when I'm trying to help people build when they don't know who their audience is yet?
It's so interesting, because I think at some respect, you have to have reach, right? In order to want to grow it, you have to have some of it. But in social media worlds, right, it's so easy and so visible, so transparent, that you see exactly the number of people that are followers of yours, exactly the number that clicked on a clip, exactly the number that are engaged. And that's frightening. I mean, I guess I was really lucky to grow up at a time when, in the media, when you would write an article, it would run the next day, and you had no idea how many people read it. And you went to work the next day, and you got a little bit better at writing an article, you put it out, and then it would come back and people would read it. Imagine having to grow up in a time where you're growing up like Kit, where in real time, you're seeing your success and failure. The thing is, we learned so much more from failing. And we got to fail and not have the entire world, like, not only watch us fail, but have literally quantitative evidence of our failures. So that I feel terrible for this audience, that they are not only having to grow up a business at this time and develop an audience at this time. But at the same time, they have all these eyes watching them. So if you're starting from having zero, we talk about a lot for this concept of VCR. Everyone has either vision, capability, and reach. I'm not talking Betamax here. VCR, vision, capability, reach. There's people that have reach. They have that audience already that don't have capability. They might have a vision of what they want to do. Then you have some people that have the vision, but they don't have the other two. So it's a matter of figuring out what they don't have and how you can help build it on and how you can help. Because some people have a very clear idea of where they want to go. They have a direction, right? They don't know how to get there. So you're helping them get to that spot. Sometimes I work with people that have no idea what they want to do next. And for them, I'm really kind of trying to step back and understand that. We're building one brand with an advisory firm, and they literally said, I'm not creative. You come up with everything. And that scares the heck out of me because it's like, you got to give me something. You got to give me something to jump off from. But those are folks that also know and understand, who are the good people around them to help them build those other things. So VCR, that's what I say. If you don't have the reach, you probably have a vision. If you don't have that, hopefully you have some capabilities in order to get people to the next level.
One of the things Kit says in this clip that I really love is actually, and I think it's specific to like the example of the person who says, I'm not creative, you do this for me, which is a great delegation of move this to the person with the talent. But the other thing that's going on inside there is saying somebody like you is someone who's really good and trained at finding that through line. Here's 17 little pinpricks of light. Oh, here's a constellation. Here's Orion. You're really good at that. How do you think about finding the right through line to then get the reach?
It's so interesting because I can remember early days as a journalist and not being able to have the through line. You kind of would say, here's a concept, here's some nuggets, here's an ending. The truth is, without the through line in the story, there's nothing. It's just a bunch of words. So what you need to do is always take a moment to step back as you develop anything. Give yourself time that it's not always going to come and create clarity right away. And that's hard for people. People want this to be easy and instant. I mean, we work and live in a society now where like the different distance from knowing to not knowing is so small because of, these amazing devices in our hands and because of Google that we don't appreciate and give ourselves time to really think and connect the dots. AI is really good at giving you a story, but it's not good at explaining what that story means and why it means something to your specific audience. Because AI doesn't know your audience. It doesn't understand. You can give it all the prompts, all the information you want, but you really, at the end of the day, what makes it easier for me is I kind of start from both directions, top down, bottom up. You want to start from the top down and think about it from this way. What is going to grab your attention? Okay. The headline's going to grab your attention. What's going to make people want to lean in? Bottom up, you want to say, what result am I looking for at the end of the day? You want to be able to say, and then you kind of got to work those things to find the middle. So the middle is often forgotten about. But if you don't connect those dots from, I've got your attention, but without like helping and creating an outcome that I want, it's useless. But without knowing my outcome, you could have the greatest headline ever, and it's just clickbait.
All right, inside of this. Now, this is a personal question pretty much for me. So I think about this, and I'm always going to think about this on musical terms. So both what's the thing that gets the attention at the top, and then where do I want to land on the bottom? And the middle, I always think in terms of like tension and resolution. Like that opening or whatever the attention grab at the top is basically where I'm like kicking off the tension in some way, shape, or form. And the bottom is always that resolution. And I feel like just like the top bottom strategy is the same way that I have to develop the story as I'm going to come up with the YouTube thumbnail or whatever else. Mm-hmm. How do you reconcile sort of like tension and resolution across this stuff?
So to me, I think let's think about it. Let's use a music analogy here. I think of like a great album. Listen, you're going to have that hit, the radio hit that's on there. But if you ever bought an album that's got an amazing hit on it and then nothing else,
welcome to the 90s catalog of how many artists.
Right. One-hit wonders. There's so many one-hit wonders out there, and you're sitting there with Presidents of the United States of America on your shelf over here.
How dare you love me? How dare that's some great songs. Like Kitty on My Porch, Peaches.
Right.
Kitty Foot.
But think about, okay, I'll give you another one here, a fastball. right?
Yes.
The Way.
The Way.
So
right.
The Way is a great song. You bought that album and you were like, and you're so disappointed that when the follow-up album comes out, you've lost your audience because they're irritated they spent $22 on a CD. I don't know if CDs cost that much in 1998, but
it was
close.
Around
there.
Yeah.
Right.
High
so
teens at least.
You were kind of mad about the fact that you spent that money and you've lost your audience. So you need to create albums that tell a story, that kind of take you from one to another. Those are the albums you listen to over and over again. There's a reason why the Who's Tommy is so good. And there's some clunker tracks on there, but they're telling a story, you know? So what I always say is that kind of tension resolution, that kind of depth is so important as you kind of go from beginning to end. You know, it's, I'm thinking about some of my favorite albums of all time, and they tell a story. They have tracks that even when they're not the big hit, they're things that you as a fan of that artist love that much more. The Beatles' Abbey Road. I love the second side of that album, the medley that carries you through. It's fantastic and has a great crescendo and a finish. It's amazing. Why? Because I love the Beatles, but at the same time, you get to that album and you're like, this is amazing because there's a story that takes you from beginning to end. I go to the beginning of the Beatles catalog and they filmed those, they recorded, one of those albums in a day. Now, when you record Abbey Road, you have months to really work on that. And that creates that kind of depth.
Months, the depth, and just, and I'm trying to think so first off, Abbey Road, you nail it all the way down to the cover, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you walk past that in the store, and not only do we have the iconic cover, now all the people go and want to walk by and do the thing. And
we did that this year. We went to London, and I even my one nephew plays along with all of my silliness, and he took off his shoes just like Paul McCartney on the cover of the album.
But there you go, and like right down to the questions of why does Paul not have shoes on that album cover?
Right, because Paul's dead.
And then you follow it through with the entire record, the whole sequence. I actually really love that metaphor. It almost works better as an album metaphor than like a book metaphor when you're talking about so much content and brand building.
Books, here's the thing about books and TV shows and movies. Sometimes you'll buckle in for those, and even when they're bad, you're like, I'm gonna finish this out. If you're in a bad album, you'll put it away, and sometimes you put that artist away. You're like, they really blew it here. I call it the second album conundrum. First album, you've had your whole career to put together. You get to that second album and you've really had 8 months, 9 months to think of all these new songs to put it on. At that same time, you're touring the first album, you're trying to really create an audience for yourself, and you still got to be creative. That is really the challenge we all have as content creators is, hey, while I'm still selling this first concept to you, my brain's got to be thinking about the next concept. I was with my brother yesterday, and he was like, hey, how'd you get off? We were at his son's baseball game. How'd you get off? I was like, oh, I'm always working. It's happening up here. Pointed to my head, and he laughed. And I'm like, no, seriously. Like, I'm always thinking of what the next concept's going to be that's going to grab your attention. Because, listen, we all can't be the Beatles. We also all can't be Pearl Jam, where second, third, fourth albums got some depth to it. And I challenge. What would you rather be? Would you rather be a band that's so great for like a flash? Like, would you rather be Nirvana or Pearl Jam? That's my question to you.
You're going to trigger an existential crisis, and then we're going to have to talk about unplugged albums.
Oh, there's some good ones.
There are some good ones. I got to make a great Lane Staley, Alice in Chains Unplugged reference the other day, but
love it.
You'll have to dive into the playlist to figure out where I made that one. The other point that's here that I just thought was so interesting, and David Burkus mentions it, where he was like, I just had to go out and do 10 years of good work, basically. I had to write, I had to research, I had to speak to crowds and audiences before 10 years deep into doing this stuff. I stepped back, I looked at it, was like, oh, isn't it funny? These things show up. What do you think about, like, you've been doing a job for a while, you've been building a company, you've been running maybe a practice or whatever in your world for a while, and then you step back and you just stopping to ask the question, like, what the hell happened and why? Feels like an infinitely useful exercise for people.
And the hardest thing, again, is to give yourself time for perspective, to give yourself time to step back and do those things. We're so stuck in the day-to-day of filling our moments and filling our minutes, making them memorable and also useful, also building a business, but also giving ourselves time to step back. I think so many businesses have it right when they give you time for sabbatical, time for reflection, time to think. But he was talking about those pillars, right? And it was so interesting because I was with him. I was like, great storytelling throughout my career echoes, and it's the same. There's so many things that I look at, and stories that were compelling, videos that were compelling, they have character, they have people, they have moments, they make you lean in at the top, like we were talking about earlier, but they have that depth of knowledge and then ultimately a takeaway for you to really shine with. So like I was thinking about it from the perspective, okay, let me step back. And when I step back, I said, the stories you tell have to have those things. They have to make you care, right? They have to give you a moment of that you can take away from this, that you can make yourself better, make yourself improve. And they have to have resolution so that ultimately there's a really strong ending to all of this too. There's that solid conclusion that ties back to the beginning so that you feel like this whole thing wasn't a waste of time. So I agree with him that like when we give ourselves moments to step back, we can see the big picture. But going back to what you said earlier, we don't give ourselves those moments because we're on to the next thing. We're on to the next thing. We're on to the next thing. And sometimes we forget about those things until, suddenly it hits us in the face like, oh, wow, that was a big moment. I kind of let it pass.
It's funny how those sneak up on you. I'm gonna give you a chance. You want to guess?
All right.
Why did I need to show you this David Burkus and Kit Huffman clip? What do you think I invited you here for today?
I think so much of it, I looked at it and thought about the brand piece of it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about branding. And it's been awesome, doing a lot of the branding stuff that I'm doing. But when I saw brand, I was like, okay, we're talking brand today. We're doing something. And people are, and it's interesting because I'm getting ready for our annual meeting with all of our advisors coming up. And I've been thinking a lot about brand and impact, and making an impact is hard. It's hard for people to make a big impact. It's hard for people to want to stand out from the crowd. It's easy to just blend in with the wallpaper and do your job, punch in and punch out. But if you want to if you want to stand out, you've got to step back. You've got to say, what's different about me? What can I do that's going to make an impression? But also, once you kind of lean into that impression, what's going to make that a lasting impression? And that's what got me excited about today's conversation, was being able to do that. And of course, because, I love storytelling with you.
There you go. Storytelling. So you pretty much nailed this. I mean, I basically said that identity is emergent and never or rarely an emergency. So you got to do the consistent work. You got to reflect regularly. And I think that's just like what you were just saying, the actually giving yourself the time and the space to stop, making it a habit to do that. Because there's all sorts, we have accomplishments and things that go by and we just never notice.
We never notice. Do you recently those those Facebook memories where it pops up and it says, I don't know if you're a Facebook person anymore.
I quit my Facebook a couple of years ago.
Smart. Get away from it.
But my wife does. And she was just saying the other day, she was like, I have to share this picture on this road trip we were just on so that it comes up in my memories.
Right.
It's like, I really want to see this like in a year or 3 years. I want to be reminded of this specific moment. I was like, that makes me almost want Facebook again. But
absolutely. So I saw yesterday a memory from 2018. It was funny because I had almost forgotten about it. They're right now in the process of naming a new pope. And my wife was like, do you remember, you went to St. Louis? And I was like, yeah. And literally just popped up in the Facebook memories to give me a moment to reflect. It was 7 years ago. I was in the midst of doing a documentary on impact investing, and this cardinal from Ghana, Peter Turkson, who's now apparently one of the front runners to become pope, was flying into St. Louis to talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Great opportunity to interview him. I was super psyched. I was all set to do the interview. He then was going to say mass, and then he had to go and speak at this thing. So it was like you had him for 10 minutes. His flight gets delayed. I get told by the people we were at St. Louis University, they could tell us, listen, we would love to give you this interview. I don't know if we're gonna have time.
Yeah.
So he's definitely saying mass. So mass is like at 3, the reception's at 4. There's no way you're getting him. So he comes in, his flight's delayed. He goes right into church to say mass. And I go to the people, I'm like, well, how's he getting from church to the reception? Because it was like, 2 blocks away in this facility. And they're like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. I was like, okay. So I went outside. I found like a DPW crew, the Department of Public Works, and I said to them, hey, we need to borrow this cart to bring the cardinal over. And they're like, absolutely. The guy was like, did you just steal a cart? I was like, I don't know if I stole it. I'm just borrowing it. I literally drive the thing over, park it next to the sacristy, because I know from my altar boy days, he needs to come to the back to take off his robes. I stand in the room where he's going to have to, disrobe to go to the next thing. He walks in and I go, Your Excellence, I have your vehicle outside. Instead of driving him to the place for the reception, I then take him around a corner. So I kind of kidnapped him. I don't know. I take him around the corner to where we're filming the video. Go, oh, good news. I'm also going to be doing the interview with you today for the video. He knew about it. He's like, okay. We go in, I do a video interview, and then I put him back in the cart and I drive him over there. I left the keys in that cart and left St. Louis, having been armed. So yes, Facebook reminded me of this memory. I'm rooting hard for him to become Pope because I'd like to say someday I kidnapped a Pope.
That is something you can be proud of. And I got to think, back to this idea though, it's stories, it's characters, it's linking all these things. It's the tension of, oh my God, you actually got the cart and now we're waiting to find out what happens and how you're going to get it. That's what makes that such a good story. And that's what part of makes, that's the Matt Ackermann brand right here, is you're going to get a little bit of a surprise.
You're going to get a surprise. You're going to get a story. I'm not just a pretty face with sneakers on his wall.
All right. If people want to find you, follow you, harass you on the internet, where should they look you up now?
Oh, check me out on Twitter at any time at Acadyac. Don't talk back. So yeah, I would love to chat with folks anytime and chat music, chat storytelling, chat popes. I'm all there for you.
Here for all your Pope talk needs. Matt Ackermann, thanks so much for coming back on Just Press Record, and we are out. Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below. The Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Zeigler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.